Where were we?
You're about to tell me a dream.
Oh, yeah. So, let me think for a minute. My head kind of got out of the game a little bit when I was coming in. So the other night, it was Wednesday night. It was the night before my test. Okay, so in this dream, it starts out where I'm in this tunnel. Okay, and imagine like a tunnel that's being dug from both directions. Okay, it's like a big tunnel through a mountainside, and you know there's a team on one side digging, and there's a team on the other side digging, and it's like a mile long, this tunnel, and it's huge. It's like 200 feet across. It's like 200 feet wide, and I'm part of this crew that's operating this machinery to dig this tunnel. It's like a giant arch, kind of like a band shell, like that size, only it just keeps going. It's like flat, and then it arches from the bottom, goes up about 50 feet to the top, highest point, and then back down. And we're digging this tunnel for a while, and then all of a sudden it got to the point where the two teams were meeting in the middle, and there's like this mountain of dirt, like this wall, and then I started to climb up it, and you know, at the end of this tunnel I started to climb up this wall, and I pushed some dirt away, and I could see the other side of the tunnel. You know, I could see the team on the other side, like we were starting to come together, where we were like almost done with the tunnel. And like I see light come through, and I can see like we're almost done, and I start to go back the other way, out to go back to the entrance of the tunnel on my side. And as I'm walking out, there's this rumble and this sound like creaking, like if you're on like a giant wooden ship and it's bending, and the wood is like creaking over. There's no wood, but I hear this sound, this really ominous sound, and this rumbling, and I realize, the ground is shaking, the walls are shaking, and I'm deep underground. I'm half a mile underground under a mountain, which is a place that I wouldn't really normally find myself or like to be in real life. Like that's kind of a claustrophobic environment for me. And there's this rumbling, and I just have this overwhelming sense of I need to get out of there, and I just start running. And right as I start running, the tunnel starts collapsing around me. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying, because I know that I'm not going to make it to the end of the tunnel, to the outside, and it's just the ceiling, all of this earth and rocks are just kind of falling towards me, not like in pieces, like the whole thing is just like closing in on me. And it gets to the point where it's like 2 feet over my head, and the light near the end of the tunnel, the outside, is starting to get dimmer and dimmer, and the light is just going away, and then all of a sudden I'm just completely enveloped, engulfed in dirt and sand, and it's just all around me, and I can't move, just like that, like a skier in an avalanche. All of a sudden I'm covered, and I can't move. And I just remember thinking that I'm completely trapped. I'm trapped. And this huge, overwhelming sense of utter helplessness and resignation just washed over me. Because, what can you do? You're buried under a mountain. I'm buried alive. And what I realized was I have this little pocket of air where I can breathe. I kind of I was in this position where I was like on my knees and then kind of doubled over with like my head down by my knees.
Oh my God.
And I just remember feeling this really intense pressure all around me of this earth that was just packed all around me. I couldn't move my legs or my arms. I couldn't move anything. and there was just like maybe this 6-inch little bubble of air in front of my face where I held my hand over my face, and I just remember thinking to try and breathe shallow, as if that would, help me. And I just felt so completely helpless and cut off, and it was absolutely terrifying. And at the same time, I was starting to feel almost a sense of acceptance. Like, well, here I am, and this is it, and I might as well just deal with it and go with it, because it's going to happen. I was completely torn between feeling, terrified of death and accepting of it, because what other choice did I have? And then all these thoughts started to cross my mind that began to make me feel like I was, here were all the things that I'm going to miss out on. There were all these relationships with people and things that I liked, music, and all these experiences that I had, and all these experiences that I wouldn't have, just at 1,000,000 miles an hour, just crossing my mind as I'm trying to breathe shallow and conserve this little bubble of air that I have, and this blackness, and all these thoughts are going through my head, and it just seemed like a slideshow of little clips from movies was just running through my head at random, faster and faster and faster, and I felt like my head was going to explode, like there was just so much information just like flooding by. And that's when I woke up. Kind of when you wake up from a dream, you have kind of like that startled, feeling, like you just shake really fast, and you wake up, and there's like that little bit of adrenaline, and it was like that. It was just like something just went pop, and I was awake. The first thing that I thought when I woke was, wow, I'm glad that was a dream. I'm really glad that was a dream.
That was one horrible fucking dream. I have no words for how frightening that is. I think if I dreamt that, I would have willed myself into another place. Somehow, I would have willed myself. Or my survival instinct would have kicked in even in my sleep. Because that happens to me sometimes, where I would feel like I can't do anything and I'm really going to get it. Like I had this dream, like a repetitive, dream, reoccurring dream, where there was this big old white house that had many rooms and closets and places to hide and all kinds of things. And I was living in that house peacefully with the family, and then Satan came. And I remember trying to hide from Satan, because he started wandering the halls, killing my family. And I remember nobody was making it. And I remember I hid my mother, and I hid my father, and I hid my siblings. I would there was one point where I had painted my mother and father to look like the furniture, so they would blend right in. I remember hiding one of my brothers, two of my brothers actually, in between a mattress and a bed spring. I had time to carve out a space in the bed spring so they wouldn't get mushed. Isn't that strange?
That sounds uncomfortable for your brothers.
Well, it was like a perfect little hole, perfect size for both their bodies. You know what I mean? And there was another spot where I was able to there was a secret door in one of the bedrooms, and I put my one brother in there. And mind you, I'm the eldest of 9. Okay, so I had to hide all my siblings and my mother and my father. And I didn't have time to hide any of my family. You know? I mean, I did, but I knew there was family that, I didn't know who was being killed, but somebody was being killed. Somebody in my family in the house was being killed. And apparently I had my whole damn family in there. Like hundreds. But anyway, I'm like, okay. Then it was time for me to hide, and I was so scared and I was out of breath. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm gonna hide under this pile of clothes in the closet, and maybe it'll just look like a pile of clothes. Or I could hide my head in the clothes that are hanging, yeah. And throw some socks over my chest or something so I just look like a pile of clothes. Things like that. And I remember the devil coming in to see me and going an inch away from my face. Just an inch, not from my face, but from the clothes. I mean, I could feel his breath, and it felt like it was right by my face, but that doesn't make sense, okay? I just felt like he was right there. He knew I was there. He could smell something, but he wasn't sure what it was. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't want to get this mixed up with another dream. Because in a lot of my dreams, the devil's always chasing me. Anyway,
Let me tell you one more thing.
Okay.
That I think is rather interesting. One thing that dream I had left me with was a feeling that I had a genuine near-death experience. Being the psychological factors that are involved in a near-death experience were all there. Because in this dream, I remember it was, as a lot of dreams are for a lot of people, you feel a very real sense of actually being there. It's you, the way that you know yourself, and you're sensing your environment as though you're actually there. And then all of a sudden, here I am, completely trapped, helpless, and obviously dying and realizing it. And, the psychological sort of occurrences that one would expect from having a near-death experience, or at least the way that it's made out to be, is all happening. All of a sudden I'm fearing the loss of, loved ones and friends and what, happened and what could happen, and, it's all running through my head in this big jumbled, ultra-fast slideshow until, pop, and I'm awake. It was very interesting to me in that respect. I think I kind of learned something from it.
I certainly hope so.
You ever have the dream where your teeth are crumbling?
Yeah, or they're falling out of your head.
Yeah, I hear that one's kind of common.
Yeah, I was having that feeling the other night.
I've had that dream many times. And from what I've heard and read about it, it's stress related. People tend to have that dream when they're under a lot of pressure, and it's a realization of one's mortality. Your body's age.
Don't you wonder whether or not animals feel that way, like cats and dogs? Don't you wonder if they ever have that dream when they're under a lot of trauma?
I wonder what they dream about.
Like what they're getting, if they're beaten or spanked or hit a lot, and you wonder when they twitch and they moan in their sleep. you know?
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, you know, who knows what goes on in the mind of an animal. I mean, I tend to think that their minds are, you know, rather simplistic and...
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I know they're more evolved.
Well, sure. I mean, animals, you know, they feel happiness and they feel sadness and loneliness and companionship. And, I mean, they feel a lot of the same basic emotions as any human being. They don't know how to identify those things. They just feel them. You know, like dogs don't lie. Dogs and cats don't lie. Animals don't lie. They don't have the psychological abilities. They just don't. They're not intelligent enough. So, you know, their thought patterns, I imagine, or their perceptions of themselves, you know, are hugely lacking in comparison to human beings. So I tend to think that their dreams are just basically more simplistic in nature.
I don't know. I mean, that all sounds really well and stuff, but it almost sounds too logical. It almost sounds too pared down to, like, what I feel when I'm around animals. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm no psychologist. I'm not an animal psychologist or a human behavior or psychology.
I'm not saying I'm a psychiatrist either. I'm just saying, like, how I feel around animals. I can sense things, you know, like,
In certain ways, a lot of animals, I think, have a much higher or keener sense of their environment and of the, how do I put this? I guess the general vibe of other animals or human beings, because animals having, you know, I want to say a lower intelligence, for lack of a better way to put it, have not had their minds clouded over the years of their evolution. Whereas human beings, you know, we have much more complex minds and therefore much more complex problems and a lot more variables as far as our, you know, how we think. And so in some ways, animals, while not being more intelligent, are much more perceptive on a higher level, you know, on a sensory level. You know, a dog or a cat wouldn't know how to perceive or understand the fact that they have a higher level of perception and better senses than a human being. They just do.